Hi, I'm Damali Robertson, and welcome back to the Letters to Humanity YouTube series and podcast. I am your host. I am the person who conceived this idea, and I'm the person that will be here to talk about some of the ideas that I think are really key to creating collective liberation and a real commitment to our shared humanity. This is what this is all about. This is what these conversations are all about. And I did an intro, so if you get a chance, go back and look at the intro episode that gives you all the context for what brings you here. Also, I want to say, like my channel, subscribe to my channel, share my channel, share the podcast. I'm going to have them available wherever podcasts are available, so look for them. And then also, like I said, watch it here. I'll be back here pretty frequently because there's so many ideas I want to unpack. And today, the idea that I really want to unpack is accountability. Accountability. There's so many people don't like this word. But really, bigger and more plainly than accountability, the idea that I want to unpack is when we get things wrong, how do we make things right? When we get things wrong, how do we make things right? And I've been thinking about this for a long time. And I've been thinking about this in the way of the interpersonal to the collective. Like I could see, like, if I wasn't like person who drew things really well, I would sketch like a little figure of one person standing by themselves. And I would then like maybe sketch another figure of a person standing next to them and show some way in which this person has wronged that person and how that all kind of plays out individually and interpersonally. And then I would draw a whole nother drawing of like 1,000 people, 1,000,000 people, and show the ways that when the group harm happens, when things like enslavement have taken place and Jim Crow and apartheid and the Holocaust and genocides have taken place at this large level, what it can look like to repair that. Because this is what this conversation is about. Whenever I tell a story about me, it's never about me. It's always about what this means to the group, our shared humanity. You know, I'm stepping into that phase of my life where sure, I have to show up. The I has to show up as healthy as possible, right? To be having these conversations. But then each I that shows up getting healthy, working on stuff, needs to contribute to the we part, where we are doing this in a collective way. And so I do want to start with an I story. Because this is the thing. I think so many people just tune out the collective piece because they're not willing to have the I moment, right? And I keep thinking about this. When we get things wrong in our relationships, with our partners, with our friends, what do we do? If we value that person, we do a bit of self-reflection. And I'm going to pull up this image from Mia Mingus. Mia Mingus is one of the leading people who talk about accountability. An activist, an advocate, a teacher, a facilitator, Mia Mingus, right? In the transformative justice space, right? And so when I looked at this first image that I'm going to pull up here for y'all to see, Mia Mingus says the 4 pieces of this are self-reflection, an apology, repair, and change behavior. 4 things. So like I said, let's get back to the I part of this. So when I harm somebody else, and that's the thing that I learned in a restorative justice training years ago, we all harm people. We all do things wrong. We all say the wrong things. We all get it wrong. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten something wrong. And where I'm able, I go back to repair. Where people will allow, where there is consent and there is an opening, I will go back. I will go back and repair any harm I've created at this place I'm at this place I'm seated at now in my life. I will go back to anyone that I've harmed and apologize profusely and change my behavior. Because I recognize the power in that, how that frees me and how that frees that other person, right? So I want to give you 2 examples of harm that I've created and how I've gone back to repair. One was in college. I had a friend in college that trusted me with something. And I'm not going to go into all the details, but he trusted me with something and we were friends. And this item that he trusted me with, I didn't have the same value. And my ethical stuff was kind of questionable then. And so I decided to just get rid of the thing that he trusted me with. And I'm not going to go into the details, but I did something kind of shady. And listen, every once in a while he'd be like, so what happened to that thing? And I'd be like, because I'm not taking no accountability, right? I'm just trying to get through and get by and not have him be mad, So I'm trying to keep a little little bridge between us that seems like steady enough. But really, what I've done and not taken account for is eroding all of that. So a few years ago, and I'm telling you, we graduated from college almost 30 years ago. So this would have happened like 30 years ago, this thing, but it lived between us for like 2 decades, right? And this brethren is such a cool brethren, like we were really down with each other. We were really cool. So who knows what was going on with me in that moment when I did what I did years ago. But this thing lived between us. So we interacted but we never had any real bond after that because I think the trust is broken. So even though we smile when we see each other and we as they say in Jamaica, heal each other up, and it was different. So I just came to a moment. I was at a moment in my life where I just tell the truth and I just believe in integrity and I believe in acknowledging the harm that I've created. I think I've been through some restorative justice stuff, some practices. So I've got it that, this is, and people say this is what they do, like in Alcoholics Anonymous and those spaces, is people have a whole accountability process, recovery. In the recovery process, there's usually some accountability. So I decide to call this brethren up and I say, hey, can I talk to you about this thing? And he said, sure. So I just tell him, I just lay the whole thing out. I said, hey, my brother, I wasn't in a good place. I did this thing, I did this thing, I did this thing. And all these years, I have not told you the truth. I'm telling you the truth. So he said, are you in recovery? And my standard thing is, aren't we all at some level in some kind of recovery, doing something to change and grow and be better? And that thing was like a weight off of me. And we could proceed together with genuine connection after that and trust. And the thing that is interesting is that he kind of was like, you something else. And we had a laugh at this stage, right? But I was so afraid of saying the thing that I didn't even dream up the possibility that we could be good after all of that. And we're good. And to this day, this is my brother. I love him. I give thanks for him. And I give thanks for the ability to have those real types of conversations. And so that's one example in my own life. Okay, so I want to tell another story. And, I want to tell another story, a personal story, because I think every time we can tell a personal story of where we may have gotten it wrong or created some kind of harm, it allows us a space of self-reflection that we talked about in Mia Mingus's framework around accountability. And it supports us, I think, in moving into the other areas. So when my father passed away 2 years ago. And when my father passed away, I just went into a deep place of grief. And grief will take you into a number of places. Darkness, feeling of great despair, feelings that, yeah, just a range of feelings, right? There's a whole thing. There's like a whole science around this that people talk about the 5 stages of grief. And so if you can just imagine those stages and then just see my picture next to it, going through all the things. And at the time I was in this relationship, I was in a relationship that was probably one of the healthiest, most supportive relationships I'd ever been in my life. And, we can come back another day to talk about my life. We won't do that today. But I'll just summarize to say that I've had quite a bit of chaos, tumult, and pain in my relationships. Most of my relationships, the teenage years into full-on adulthood, come with quite a bit of, wounding. And so here I was in this what felt like a really healthy relationship. And yet I'm in the midst of this grief, and so I'm just not available. And so I just tell the person, I can't do this. I'm not available. And what's interesting is that, I was in a relationship with another beautiful human being who happens to be a woman. And she was one of the most kind, generous people that I've met and encountered, who really cared about me and showed up for me in so many ways. And so I stayed in this period of like numbness and like just not feeling anything for probably a good year and a little bit. And then when I started to emerge from it a little bit, I felt like I needed to go back into the world to date, to find my way. And that wasn't like any reflection of her. It was just something that I felt, well, I need to do this. So I did. I went out, I dated. I actually even started a new relationship with another amazing human being. And this human being is another person that I have come to love and value deeply, right? And so here I am. And what I recognize is that as I tried to move on, I did quite a bit that created pain for the person I was in that relationship with when my dad died. I did quite a bit that, in full transparency, just comes through as harm, And sometimes it's interesting because you may not even intend to be harmful. It may not be, I set out to harm. I'm just not that person that's spiteful and wants to harm someone. But if I'm just honest, I created patterns of harm and things. Excuse me. And even in this new relationship that I started, what I recognize pretty quickly is that this person and the way that they move in the world had some real trigger points for me. There was some real activation. And then when you kind of layer in the fact that this previous relationship that I had ended and was working to move on from, I woke up one day and recognized that it isn't that I didn't love this person anymore. It's that I'd put them in a compartment. And the grief process will take you into places because you're working your best to survive. For me, I'm working. I have multiple projects happening. I have young adult children who have their own stuff going on that I'm trying to be supportive with. I have, this whole group of things. And in order to really survive grief, I found you have to put things in compartments. And I hadn't realized that I'd put this past relationship in a compartment and just closed it down. And so here I am in this moment of having this new relationship and feeling really pretty good about it until the triggers things start happening, until the triggers start shaking me awake or shaking me into a place of, oh shit, you have stuff buried under here that needs your attention. And one of the things that I felt needed my attention was this past relationship and the ways that I'd created all these ways of harm. And so, what do? I certainly went back to try to make things right, to apologize, to repair, and to offer change behavior. And at the same time, I recognized I was creating a ripple in the new relationship as well. And so I kind of came to a place where I recognized, well, two things need to happen here. You need, or maybe three things. You need to, part of this repair is working on yourself. So you need to go back to therapy. And I found a therapist that actually I feel really, really good about. And I say this to you in full transparency today because so many of us are afraid to go to therapy. So many of us have grown up in homes that therapy wasn't a thing. And we may not normalize the need for help or support. And I know I need support right this moment. And part of the evidence of that is the rippling of harm that has been created in across both these relationships. And so back in therapy, the other thing is pausing. And it can be hard, but I think that's part of the whole accountability process for me is pausing, that this repair and this change behavior can really come in a pause, to be with what's been created, to look at it closely and to ask yourself, how do you never recreate this? And I think it's interesting because these are all ongoing. This particular story, this is why I'm choosing to tell it. It's an ongoing process. The first story I told, I feel like we came to something and we made a kind of peace and we reconciled in a way. That truth and reconciliation process I'm going to talk about later when we get to the collective part of this conversation. But this truth and reconciliation process showed up in my life with that first story. And I think with this second one that I'm giving, which is more alive and present right now, yeah, I'm still working on the truth and reconciliation of it all. And I recognize the impact to other people. And how does this pause, this return to therapy, which is really for me and my healing, but how does it secondarily support the relationships that I value and the people that I care about? How is it about me, but about we at the same time, And so that's like where I'm at. And in being there, I recognize the need to honor the great gift of love I've been given by both these people and honor them, and myself. And I think that takes us into our collective place, because in the collective space, I think we're all healing. Well, let me not say that. I think we're all wounded by racism, by systems of oppression, by violence. You look at the recent killing of Sonia Massey in her own home when she called the police to protect her. There's something that says to me, her life, the ways the police officers who were in her home weren't able to place value on her life, is telling about where we are as a society and the wounds that we have. And the fact that the wounds that we have are not individual. So those police officers, I know, without knowing them, have a great deal of that trauma, experiences of trauma and white-bodied supremacy, as Resmaa Menakem calls it, white-bodied supremacy alive in them. And I can't say it enough. Get you a copy of My Grandmother's Hands, because he talks about police and the relationships between Black folks and police in this book. But the fact is, we can't say that those police officers don't have their own wounding, because to walk into someone's home and not see their value and to take the steps that they took to violently end her life says a lot about where we are. And this is what this particular podcast is about, is that looking within. Where are we, y'all? And we have to be able to look at ourselves first in order to look out at the great beyond, into like the where people are collectively. And that is the only reason I've offered 2 personal stories today, is to make that connection that if Damali, if you are not working on some healing stuff and you're carrying around all the wounds, it's going to be more challenging for us to actually heal the collective stuff. I'm gonna give us another moment of practice. And here's what I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to take it over to the collective now. America, in particular, the United States of America, you have gotten this wrong for generations. The United States of America, that's where I'm seated, that's where I'm living at this moment. So I'm going to address you. This letter is for you. This love letter to humanity is for you. You have gotten this wrong for generations. You stole Native American land, murdered and created havoc for Native American people. Your boarding schools, all the ways that you force assimilation on them, including the way that we see societies parsed out into reservations that really this is their land. Talk about like the way occupied territory shakes out and you just place people somewhere. Now, I can't say I know enough of the history to know whether or not there is some feeling of independence and sovereignty for Native American people on those spaces that they now occupy on the reservations. I don't know, so I won't say that. But what I'll say is, from the looking at it, it looks to me like you decided to take land that didn't belong to you and then go like, oh, here are some corners of it that you can occupy. Enslavement. Building your entire society on the enslavement of other people. Justifying it through the Bible, through religion, right? Continuing to perpetuate this idea that Black people were less than human, were subhuman. And to continue to perpetuate the pigmentocracy, and that's a word from Resmaa Menakem, where the darker you are, the less human you're perceived as, the lighter you are, the more human you're perceived as. And as Isabel Wilkerson talks about the caste system that you've created here in the United States, you've gotten it wrong, America. And every time someone tries to talk to you about getting it wrong, what's your response? What is your response? And I'm talking about the Mitch McConnells, the MAGA folks, and some of y'all liberals too. We weren't the people who enslaved you. No one who was enslaved is here today. So what would we have to do about that, basically? But as Isabel Wilkerson also says in Caste, we have inherited this house, people. We are all living in the house that was built on the foundations of enslavement and genocide, the stripping of land, the colonization, right? We are all living in a house built on those foundations. And so until we actually look at accountability, we're going to continue to spin our wheels the way that we see it spinning today, where the thrust of the day, and as far as I'm concerned, the thrust that I see the media respond to, that I see everything that holds up any of the pillars of these systems respond to, is white supremacy. And as Resmaa Menakem says, white body supremacy. Because we are jockeying as a society to become a cult following of the MAGA ideologies. And that's not us as Black folks, brown folks, indigenous folks who really understand humanity. But what I'm talking about, what I notice, is that a lot of white folks who don't want to do the accountability work are ready to jump back on the train of the cult following of white body supremacy. And that's just what it is. And what I'm going to say to you is every single society that has decided that, listen, we've had some painful moments, but we're going to address them, is better for it. South Africa is an example. Rwanda is an example. Germany, in many ways, is an example, right? Where these societies have had truth and reconciliation processes, have decided that they're going to say, yes, this happened, and we're going to look at it. Does that make any of these societies perfect? No. Does that mean that they get it all right all day, every day? No. But what it does mean is they have a commitment to recognizing that something happened that should not have happened. That's the self-reflection part. What does it look like for an entire society to participate? What does it look like to have collective self-reflection? This is why we have truth and reconciliation processes. This is why Nelson Mandela, after coming out of being imprisoned on Robben Island for multiple, at least 2 decades, could come out and see the need for a truth and reconciliation process. There's been too much pain. There's been too much pain. So there needs to be self-reflection. And to go with that, there needs to be a public apology, and not just a public anemic apology that I'm sorry, but a public apology that comes with some wealth back, some land back, some redress to say, listen, this thing happened and we are responsible. You know, it's mind-blowing to me that people will say that none of the people who this impacted are still alive. Look at the Tulsa, what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Look at what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Tulsa, Oklahoma is an example of Black advances. Tulsa, Oklahoma was called Black Wall Street. Black folks were doing really well in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And then white folks, historically, you could look up this story. Just Google Tulsa, Oklahoma race massacre. And some white person and persons got angry, and that literally led to the burning down, the killing, the maiming, this kind of disruption of that Black wealth and Black upward mobility. And so when people say Black people are lazy and shiftless, that is not true, especially in this American context. When people try to beat down African Americans as if they've done nothing, as if they have advanced nothing, as if they're not as qualified, it's not true. Every time an African American makes an advance, white folks get mad. It's the white backlash, right? And it's a real thing. It's happening right now. And what I'm saying is the Tulsa, Oklahoma massacre happened many years ago, and there are survivors from that massacre who have tried to legislate this, who have tried to push this up the proverbial pole so that someone could pay attention and make it right, and have been refused over and over and over again. One of those survivors, I believe, is 109. So what I'm saying to you is that this is the part of accountability, of first of all, acknowledging, yes, that happened. Yes, our ancestors, there were people who did that. And we apologize. And like I said, not from that anemic apology place. Instead, from that, here's what we're going to do. We're going to repair this, right? And this is where the other pieces come. The repair and the change behavior. What does repair look like? And I just want to give you all something to think about here. We don't decide how to repair. In the stories that I told, I was in conversation with people personally about what repair could look like. What would they need, right? I didn't give all the details of that. But to my first story, I did, what can I do, right? In the second story, we're still trying to figure that out. What can I do to make this better? And finally, I'm going to say, change behavior. Because change behavior is the only real measure of if you really are taking accountability. And so the last story I told in my personal life, I am committed to change behavior. I'm so committed I'm putting it on this podcast. But here's the thing. Without that change behavior part, this is meaningless. This entire conversation about accountability is meaningless. And this is where most people skip out. Because what it takes to change your behavior is practice and ongoing discipline, like a confronting the discomfort that comes with all the things that arise in us, right? The fear, so now they're going to have me, so now they're going to probably try to ask me to do 1,000 things because I committed to change behavior. Societally, collectively, white folks are probably asking themselves, what does that mean if we have to change our behavior? And here's the thing, in 2020, when all the uprising happened, and there were all these companies writing statements, and there were all these people investing in DEI, and a person like me shows up in the DEIB role and says, well, these are some of the things that need to change in this workplace. Many of you were not having it. And so you're just happy to see it all come undone right now. You just yay, I don't have to do all of that then. We don't have to do all these things these people said. This DEIB person we hired at this company saying that we need to be more equitable and we need to have policies that protect, Black employees, LGBTQIA employees, intersectional employees. We don't have to do that. But here's what I'm going to tell you, and this is the real. You're going to do it, you're going to be back at square one. And you can put all your supremacy, domination, power, and money on it. You can run a candidate that you think is going to save this particular way of being, and you can go vote for him, and you can continue to strip away policies and take away people's rights and do all of that. But I'm going to tell you, this problem is going to keep waiting for you. It's going to keep coming back. Because the truth is, for each of us here that are demanding collective liberation and to be seen as fully human because we are. To be seen as fully human because we are. And that is our birthright. So for each of us, we're not going anywhere. We're seeds. You thought we would die. You think that all of this is going to make us go away, but it won't. We're going to keep growing because we're seeds. And that is the takeaway. That's the thing I want to leave you with. We are seeds. And so no matter what happens to this body, no matter what you think you're doing to anybody by passing unjust, dehumanizing laws, we are going to continue the momentum toward justice, collective liberation, and our full humanity because that is ours by birthright, as it is yours. And what would it look like if there was some real accountability in this country so you could get it right? So you could move from pushing it aside and pretending it isn't happening, or you could move from just continuing to do what feels comfortable to you and move into the space of the discomfort where it hurts to know that this history happened. Where you do what I do. You look yourself in the face and you say, oh my God, I got that so wrong. And in the process, I've hurt so many people and myself. Because you never go through a moment like this without hurting yourself too. And this is for my white folks. You don't know, but the ways you hurt yourself are beyond the words I have today because it's something embedded. It's intergenerational. The intergenerational trauma is coming for you too, in different ways. And so what would it look like if we decided to stop hurting one another? To let go of this idea of superiority and supremacy and look the hurt in the face. Teach the real history. Look at your Black, brown, indigenous neighbor as fully human. Look at your queer, trans neighbor as fully human. And move forward together. What would that take and what would that look like? And I'm telling you, as a person who's doing her work on her own, it can be painful. But I'm willing to look at it and be with it and feel the pain of it because I know I can heal. And once I start healing, it only gets better. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned. We'll have another episode soon. Like, share, subscribe. Bye, y'all.